so far until Israel actually launches a ground incursion, and then everything could change after that. Now, it's clear, though, that the U.S. has had some limited success diplomatically, because when Blinken's been going to these different places, especially in Egypt and in Saudi Arabia, he was actually required to wait many hours instead of seeing the Saudi leader, bin Salman. I think that was, an intentional thing, and that's a little bit troubling. And so far, Blinken hasn't gotten any real results from his trips so far. So I think that you can say our influence has been diminished already, probably because of things that have been happening over years, not just this. But until Israel either does or doesn't launch this ground offensive, and how that goes, I think is going to really depend on what happens next, because will the United States support them, or do we say, that you need to hold back? And I think that's what everybody's waiting to see.
Sir, also Iran's involvement was definitely being speculated as well. They've mentioned that they won't engage until Israel attacks Iran or its interests. Then they also said that this is not an official statement. Israel and Hezbollah have been exchanging fire as well. How do you see the statement from Iran?
Yeah, I think that it's intentionally vague. I think that they want to keep their options open. And I think that's because in some statements, they've actually said that if Israel attacks any of their patrons as well as any of the direct Iranian people, then they might actually engage as well. So I think they're being a little bit vague because they don't want to be obvious. Now, look, Iran does not want to go to war with either Israel or the United States because they don't have enough power to do so. So they probably won't go head to head unless there's some sort of big conflagration where it's Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, some of these other axis of resistance. If there was a big issue like that, then perhaps they might. But they're not going to want to go toe-to-toe with either Israel or the United States if they're by themselves.
If you just take this next comment which came in from the Palestinian leader, Hamas actions do not represent Palestinian people. Now, there is some kind of a distinction which is being drawn here for at least global people, for everyone globally, that, Hamas and Palestine, they're not the same, and Hamas does not represent Palestinian people either or their interests. Now, given the kind of destruction Gaza has seen after Hamas' attack on Israel, are we seeing a division between Hamas and Palestinian objectives as far as the Palestinian leadership is concerned?
Oh, there's been huge disputes between them. This is not anything new. Very many people in the Palestinian in the occupied territories don't view Mahmoud Abbas with very much respect. They've been challenging Hamas for quite a while. Obviously, Hamas is in the Gaza Strip and the Palestinian Authority is not, the Fatah. So that's already been a problem. And I think that you probably see in Mahmoud Abbas want to try to maybe reestablish some of his authority because, look, the Palestinian people have to see that it's been the Hamas leadership that their actions have directly precipitated this attack from Israel and is explicitly responsible for the deaths and the almost 8,000 or 9,000 wounded on top of the 2,600 dead. So I think that Mahmoud Abbas is trying to take advantage of that to try to reassert control, to try and protect his people.
Now, the United States has asked China to use influence for Middle East calm. Now, could you talk to us about the role that China can play here?
Well, China can play quite a bit of a role, but they've actually distanced themselves a little bit from Israel in recent days. They've tried to have a pretty good, solid relationship with them. The Chinese have been wanting to have more of a diplomatic role, in several different parts of the world, the Middle East, in Africa, even in Europe, and even attempting to do some things that mediate in the Russia-Ukraine war. So they're trying to continue doing that, but they're trying to kind of playing a balancing role themselves because they don't want to get too closely tied to Israel, especially if Israel comes heavy-handed and causes even more death and destruction with a ground offensive that maybe goes too far. So I think like most everybody else, they're kind of waiting to see how things play out.